Football Then and Now, a fun look at football nostalgia and the modern game intertwined. Join us. A warm welcome. It is an evening instalment of Football Then and Now, episode 40, Chris, the big 4-0. We finally got to it. Oof. And yeah, how are you, mate? How's things?
You know what I mean? You drop the 40 and then, you know, the big 4-0 and it's like, shit, man, that's like us next year. And it's like, the last thing I want to hear is 40 at the moment, yeah?
I had Will Cannon saying about this the other day. He's turning 40 this year. I said, don't get Chris started on this. He's saying that about the years. I said, we've said for the last couple of years, the years are just rolling by, aren't they? They're just passing us by, man. But embrace it a little bit, I think, mate.
Oh, yeah. People tell me it's just a number. And, you know, and I'm like, these people are telling me they're in like mid-20s, early 30s. I'm like, fuck off. You know, you wait till you get there. Like,
leave me alone. Yeah. Leave me alone to become old and cantankerous and not wanting to listen to anybody. And totally get it. Totally get it. Before I move on to your fantastic segment that we have, I just want to say I'm going to plug Sports Social at the start, not towards the back end like I normally do. So I'll just put the graphic up very quickly before we get into the In This Day in Football history. So as we always say, Chris, Sports Social Podcast Network, 500 partners and counting. I bet that's close approaching 600 now because this is an old graphic. But yeah, Chris, just tell the viewers and listeners, you know, if they've got a sports podcast about what Sports Social have done for us and various other sports podcasts.
Yeah, for all three shows we do as well, isn't it? Really, you know what I mean? They've always been great. You know, plugging our shows, putting our clips up, helping us when we ever have an issue, which is, you know, it's very marginal. Really, we don't have many issues. It's quite a simple thing to do. But you know, when anything sort of is a hiccup, they are, you know, very quick to email, give you advice when you need it. And like I said, it's always handy to have someone who can sort of promote your podcast. You know, certain aspects of, you know, of the show. Say like today, they could pick something up that they liked and they'll throw it on their social media. And it always gives you know, a bit of handiness there because we can only reach so far to people where they've got a massive following. So, you know what I mean? It's giving you that more like a broad, isn't it, horizon with more people looking at you and looking at the show. So, yeah, they're great. And like I say as well, you know, they pay for you to be on Spotify, Apple. You know what I mean? So you are getting around and they do it, like I say, they're a fantastic place. And, you know, for people like us, but, you know, big stars from all different sports have got their own podcast on there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you can list as many shows as you want. I used to list years ago at cost, and especially through COVID when I was doing so much content, it was going over the threshold of the initial threshold with Buzzsprout. You can literally put as many episodes up and there's no cost to you. That's just the minimal thing that you get, isn't it, as well? It's everything else, as Chris has encapsulated there, the service they give. And Holy Trinity, Chris has been on that, you know, a fair few times now, haven't you? They're on there and they do great stuff. It's just so many, as you say.
Yeah, it's like, you know, there's plenty of like football ones on there, you know, for all different teams you support. Like obviously we have Evertonians, so Unholy, the Blue Room are on there. I know Toffee TV put their podcast on there now. You know what I mean? It's just you see where the bigger content creators who've been at it long enough are recognizing that this is the best place to, you know, to be, and it's you get to meet these people along the way, and then you know you end up on their show, they come on yours, and you know it's quite. You know, like a family in a way, isn't it?
Absolutely. So yeah, if you've got content, if you're sport related, it can be any sport. It could be chess. It could be tiddlywinks. They'll take you. They'll take you on.
I don't know about tiddlywinks.
They're looking to expand. So, you know, I've been a bit dramatic there, but yeah, you know, it's superb. So yeah, just to plug them because normally I make a faux pas and do it at the end. So I was just going to do it at the start. So yeah, thank you, Sports Social Podcast Network, for all the support. Me and Chris do appreciate you. Now, moving on, Chris, it is back. It is this day in football history, and you have got a fantastic historical nugget because it was looking a bit slow on history, wasn't it, today? But you found a nugget, a diamond almost, amongst the rough of stories from this day.
Yeah, well, when you asked for it today, and obviously I've been through it, and I was this was like I'm struggling to find one. I think it'd been January we would have had some like big transfer, or some sort of hilarious transfer go on in January, but obviously the 22nd of January is not very big on it. But as you see at the bottom of the screen there, I had to plug one here. Well, you can do the maths, but a long time ago in 1927,
98 years ago to be
exact.
There
you go. Almost 100 years.
The people want history. Chris will deliver. I tell you.
I'll find something. But we've reached over 100 years, haven't we? With the last one I did, well, the one before that maybe. But obviously this is history in the making, isn't it? You're looking at it, Highbury. First division game, first division, if people don't realise, was the Premier League before the Premier League was, born. Arsenal versus Sheffield United was the first match to be broadcasted live on radio. And I think, it wouldn't have mattered back then. I think most people who love football back then would have loved that. I mean, we're lucky we get it on the telly, internet and what have you these days, but that must have been something, like amazing for them to actually listen to a game and not sort of, I don't know what they did in 1927, Stuart, to find, the scores after a game. But that must have been, like when we were able to go from, listen on the radio ourselves at the Everton games and then finding streams to watch the Everton games at 3:00, and it changed everything, didn't it? Where you can literally watch any game you want now. That in its time must have been like Christmas for every football fan, knowing that was the first of many that was to come. And obviously over time it changed and progressed as technology does.
I tell you what, the radio's still prevalent. You know what I mean? I listen to games on the radio, especially when I'm in work. If I can't be distracted too much. So to think, it's coming on for 100 years that games have been, had coverage via radio. Radio is still going. Do you know what I mean? It's mad. It's mad. And I've said about this before on the show. A radio commentator is actually harder. You're having to depict. Through that commentary, you got to be you're being visual with your words, aren't you? So It's actually a damn sight harder doing it on the radio than TV. And I respect a lot of the TV commentators. I'm not disputing that, but I just think it's a hell of a job, that, isn't it? Because you've got to be a hell of a lot more verbal on there. You're depicting it through your words. So I've got like a big respect for that, for the big commentators who are still on, Radio 5 Live, Talk Sport. I know there's a lot of local radio that pick up Premier League games as well. It's an incredible thing, isn't it, having football on the radio still to this day.
Well, as you say, I mean, when you listen to it, and I obviously remember back in the day when 3:00 kickoffs, and I'd sit in the back room, and I'd have BBC Merseyside on full blast, obviously getting bollocked by my mother because I've had it on too loud, or I'm shouting. It pretty much hasn't changed, years and years on. But yourself as a football fan listening to it on the radio before, obviously we got it on the telly, back before Match of the Day, or if it was on live, you had to visual it yourself. So it always helped to have someone who was commentating on the game, as you say, break it down. So when you're visualizing it in your head, you're matching what they're saying. And it was incredible, really, in the sense that you did feel, I don't know, I felt you feel more there listening to it on the radio than you do when you watch it on the telly, because I suppose they dumb down the crowd, where on the radio you can't dumb down the crowd. And and we all know that, we'll say especially Goodison, when we were playing really well, we were a noisy bunch, so you could always hear that. And then obviously the commentator on the radio would have to shout louder then, wouldn't he, or speak louder to get over the fans' loudness. But it's incredible. And it's just to show you how far we've come, not just with football, but just with technology as well.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? This with the radio, then I suppose not long, I suppose again, many years after that, they would have got the telly. Do you know what I mean? And then, where people have now, they've got pretty much everything, TV, internet, you name it.
Do you know what made me laugh at this one, Chris? Obviously, of this little excerpt here that you've got hold of. Radio Times printed a numbered grid of the pitch with commentator Henry Wakelam giving grid numbers in his commentary. It's quite amazing, isn't it? That interactivity, even that early on, that they did that. I think that's I think that's outstanding, actually. To give you that sense that you were there, I guess, isn't it, as well? It's quite something that I laughed when you sent me that today. That is what Radio Times did, you know, and then the commentator reciprocated and was obviously saying, oh, you know, they're in such and such an area of the pitch. Just incredible, really. It's a good one, this, mate. It really made me smile, this one.
And like you say, it's telling a story as well. You know, as you pointed out, you know, when radio commentators have to do a live football game, you have to tell a story because, you know, if you can't see it physically with your eyes, you got to imagine it. And, you know, you need someone to sort of bring you forward with it. So, yeah, you start with grids and, you know, and where is it now? They don't even need grids now. But I suppose that would have been amazing as well, though, because it was like, you know, all this new stuff. It would be amazing if you could time travel back to the exact day that this happened, and maybe the first time they broadcasted a live football game on the telly, and just to see people's expression and feel their experience, you know, for these firsts to happen. Because I imagine it would have been absolutely amazing, especially for people who couldn't get to the games and relied heavily on whatever it was in 1927 they did, you know, to find out the scores. So, yeah, they must have been mind blown.
So good, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Historical nostalgia. This is what this show is about. You know, part of the show is nostalgia, so it's great. Love it, absolutely love it. And moving on, Chris, it's obviously we're getting into that point now where we're coming to the back end of the January transfer window. A lot of deals being done. Abroad. Actually, I've noticed. There's a lot with America. I don't want to go too much into that. Atlanta. Getting Almiron back, I couldn't believe it. I've heard like 8 million. I was like, that lad can play. Be a good pickup for someone in the Premier League. But a lot of stories going around. Kyle Walker going to America after I thought it was going to be Saudi Arabia. That's where it led you to believe last week where he was going to go. But more current and more to do with domestically in the Premier League. There's been a lot of news on strikers, and the first one I want to bring up is Matheus Cunha. And heavily linked with Forest and Arsenal. I think Forest more so than Arsenal. But there's 5 other clubs, Chris, apparently looking at him. It'd be absolutely catastrophic for Wolves, I think, if he was to go. You know, they're in a battle down there with us. What do you think with that? With Cunha, you know, potentially leaving to go to one of them?
Is there a price sort of set yet?
I'm not 100%. I've done a bit of digging. I haven't actually seen, you know, officially. I'm sure there's sites putting figures out there, but surely it's got to be upwards of 50.
Well, they signed him quite close to 40 million, didn't they, originally, when they signed him was it Atletico Madrid?
Yeah, and he was at Leipzig before that, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, we were interested in getting him on loan, but they wanted a loan to buy, which obviously Wolves did instead. Obviously, we couldn't afford to go to 40 million for him at the time. But he'd be great for, I don't know, for Arsenal. I still think they're looking for something a bit more consistent. I don't know. Would he fit Arsenal? Would he fit having to be chopped and changed constantly? Because, you know, he's the man at Wolves. And I suppose if he went to Forest, I think he'd be the man there as well. Arsenal's, you know, it's a different pond, isn't it? I know Forest are up there at the moment, and I'm not knocking that, and I think it's absolutely fantastic for them. But, you know, if we're talking Arsenal, you'd imagine they'd be looking at someone a bit more, I don't know how to phrase it, is, you know, not to diss Cunha, because I do like Cunha, but, you know, someone who's consistently 20 plus goals a season. I think, and we've said this on the show before, that's what Arsenal are missing. You know, they are doing great with all these midfielders and defenders, but, you know, I think there's something else out there for them.
I've got Vissa's stats up there. Sorry. Yeah, so we're looking, obviously, his last 3 seasons, 2 goals a couple of years ago, over 17. A bit better the following year. Last year, 12 in 32. This is just his Premier League stats, of course. I haven't got EFL, I haven't got FA Cup involved in that. And then he's on 10 in 21 this year. So he's gonna be what he did last year. And four assists. 4 assists as well. So his stats are looking solid. But again, Chris Wood's playing absolutely out of his skin for Forest, and they've got a 1 year. They've got a 1 year on the bench. I know they've got other options as well. I don't think, are they just looking at it? We need to make sure we're in the top 4 now, so we'll go for him. Do you think that might be a factor? I don't think they necessarily need a striker. Forest. Wood has kept doing it week on week. I thought Chris Wood was going to slow down, if I'm honest.
He's got better, to be honest. It just shows you, and this isn't, again, we're not talking about Dyche, we're not going to go on to it, but it just shows you a difference between a manager that plays a striker that's attacker-minded to a manager that's, defensively minded. And Chris Wood, as you say, looked like he was slowing down, looked like, he wouldn't say he's coming to an end, but I think Premier League standard, but, he's found another pocket of energy, hasn't he? And he's been brilliant, and you can't knock him for that. And I thought when we played them this season, bossed us, scored a good goal as well, a good link-up play, but with the chip over Pickford. It's a difficult one for Forest, as you say, but don't forget Cunha isn't just centrally at a forward; he can break out to the wings. You can use him a bit more around the penalty box.
Leipzig, I remember him being wide for Leipzig, especially in the Champions League and the Bundesliga. He's very, like you say, he's very versatile. As he's finding his form through the middle. But like you say, he's played, and he wasn't prolific at Atletico, and he wasn't prolific at Leipzig. But he wasn't the central, he wasn't the 9, he wasn't even the 10 at times for them. But you do need to adapt, don't you? And you do need to, play along the free a lot of the times now. The way the game's gone.
But obviously tactics change, don't they? Evolve, and you go from starting from 4-4-2 to and then you go for a 9 and a 10 behind each other. And now it's more in the midfield pack going into wing, isn't it? For one striker up front. I don't know. You could necessarily, if I don't know the formation pretty much with Forest, because obviously I've only watched a few games this season of them. It'll be a hard one because if he can't play up front because Chris Wood's banging in the goals, and it'd be a sucker punch for Chris Woods if Cunha was to come in and he got pushed to the bench, because that wouldn't make any sense, and nor would it be fair to Chris Woods. You couldn't play him behind Chris Woods because Gibbs White has been absolutely phenomenal this season, and it'd be a shame to pull him off, for Cunha to play behind Chris Woods, and then the wingers, what you're looking at.
Adoy, Alanga, and then he's got Dominguez. He's got people on there. They've strengthened well, mate. Like, look at the back. Milenkovic has been absolutely brilliant in the back with Murillo.
No one Stuart. He was on a free.
Yeah, Einer. Sells came from Strasbourg, the keeper, for 5 million. There's deals to be done, because I didn't know anything about Matt Sells before he came.
Well, Newcastle, don't forget Matt Sells.
The Liverpool game, he was, that last half an hour against Liverpool. So they've got depth. They have really got depth, and maybe they are looking. We need to make sure we're getting Champions League football. It'd be interesting. It'd be very, very interesting. I just want to move on, Chris. Alejandro Garnacho, he's been in the news for several days now. A move to Napoli. He could be following Scott McTominay to Napoli, of course. I've heard about 50 plus million for him. But I've heard of Cooksey today, this could be for Victor Osimhen to come in the summer. This could be like a deal breaker, allegedly, because he's only on loan at Galatasaray, Osimhen.
So was it not a loan to buy with Galatasaray?
I don't think so. I've been having a look. I don't think there's an option to buy. I don't think. I could be wrong. But reading into it, there's talk of Osimhen with Garnacho going earlier, and this would be like a make way, like a deal breaker for him to come in.
He's still going to be spending a lot of money in Osimhen. I don't know how well he's done in Galatasaray, if I'm honest. I mean,
12 goals in 14, I think I read. And then whatever he's had, I think he's got four in the Europa League as well.
It was a strange switch that for Osimhen to go to Turkey, really. And obviously, I know Saudi, it all blew up in his face, didn't it? And Chelsea just couldn't match Napoli's price. The only problem is I like Osimhen, fantastic. Another one from France that got pipped before anyone really looked at him. Very injury prone as well. I do think he's injured quite a fair bit. But still a fantastic striker, and he still puts the ball in that back of the net. I don't know if United need that. I mean, the way he kicked off such a fuss to get out of Napoli, and Napoli have safeguarded his career for so long, to get him to where he is now. I'm not a fan of players that boot off after being at the club for so long just to get a move. I'm not a fan of it. And if he's like that there, and then he most likely had to move because he probably wouldn't have played well, or he would have switched off, or Napoli obviously wouldn't have wanted that. Who's to say he won't do that at Man United when he goes there and sees all the problems that's going on at Man United, and he's in and out the team?
They're looking at Garnacho because obviously Kvaratskhelia has gone to PSG for 70 million euros. It's about 50
Good signing that. Good signing.
I was just like, yeah, but again, I was like kind of shocked by it. I know PSG, they can pay the wages. I just felt he would have been great for the Premier League. When I had Dan on early last March on the show, we were talking about him, that link, obviously City having Kinkladze, you go for another George, and I find it a strange move personally. I think watching him for Georgia, watching him for Napoli for so long, but obviously they've got a space now. So this fella could be going, but I think Garnacho needs to be a bit stronger on the ball. He's a talent. There's no question. He can move with that ball, but I do think he's a bit lightweight at times when I've seen him. But definitely last season in games, and I've had United fans agree with me on that who watch him week in and week out. What do you think though?
The league's different in Italy though. I don't think it's not. The pace obviously is not as quick as the Premier League, and I don't think it's as tough as the Premier League. You're talking about being too lightweight on the ball. I think you'd probably get away with that in Serie A, a lot more than you would in the Premier League.
It's a fair point. It's an absolutely.
I'm not sure in the Champions League. I think you can get found out quite easily when you're in the Champions League. Obviously, because then you're challenged by everybody. But I think he'd do quite well in Napoli. For Napoli in Serie A, because, like I say, it's. I think the league suits his style. It is a shame that United are willing to, let him go because there's a talent there. Obviously,
absolutely,
we're going to be burnt with that overhead kick at Goodison Park for the rest of our lives now.
It was goal of the season, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was a cracking,
unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not the best over the head kick I've seen, but that shows what he can do, and he has pulled United out of the bag of wins, late on before, and did a lot last season for them. I don't know whether what's happened, obviously behind closed doors, is something's gone on, because it's, again, you talk about Garnacho, Rashford's going through the same situation.
Well, the representatives were in Benfica last night, weren't they, with Barca?
Yeah, and that was a cracking game, by the way.
Yeah, look, Craigie Moses, man, at 3-1 I left that game at. I was like, Pavlidis has got a hat trick. I have a look again. It's gone to 4-2. I was like, they're finished. Barca have had it. There's no way. 5-4. Couldn't believe it. And I tell you, he's been really. I don't want to make it about that too much.
I know, but it was a good game.
Rafinha. I tell you what, he was copping for it last season. He was bought in at a strange time, wasn't he? When Barca were going through all that financial nonsense. He was one away. There was talk of him leaving. He has stepped up. I'm watching the Super Cup the other week. Fantastic. He's been in fantastic form. Rafinha for them.
He's a good player, Stuart. You saw that at Leeds. He just needed a better team around him. And you look at what he's done in the fifth goal was fantastic. He broke on that right and he tucked in, didn't he? And then hit it in the corner. And that's Barcelona of old, that really, isn't it? It reminds me back to the game when you mentioned Paris Saint-Germain before, when they got battered by Paris Saint-Germain in the first leg, and in the second leg, they pulled it back. But
all guns blazing.
I kept on going out to, make a brew, and every time I come in, and I was watching all the goals for all the games last night on the Champions League.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Constantly there was something changing there, but it just showed you, Barcelona, as much as they're going through some horrid times of finance at the moment, they're still class, and they've got a great manager, and they've always had that core of fantastic talent that comes through as well. So I've got all hope for Barca. They just obviously need to sort the finances out. But with you going back to Garnacho, I think it's perfect for Napoli. I think it'd be perfect fit, absolutely perfect fit for him. And I think Italian league Serie A would be a perfect fit for him. again, I'm going back to it's a shame that he's going. You know, I rather all the talent that's in the Premier League that we can watch week in, week out, especially the young ones that, you know, have got so much potential, very high ceilings. And, you know, you just want to watch that, you know, season after season get better and better. So I'm always a bit gutted when we see talent like this go. But like I said, between with him and Rashford, something's behind closed doors going on there for that to be forced so quickly out the door.
I won't go back to Forest just yet. I've got one more item on Forest, but I'm going to bring us in. This has been rejected again anyway, and Brady's put a comment in. So we know. When I read this, it was 50-odd million. West Ham put a bid in for John Duran. Not in a month of Sundays is that going to happen. And, you know, they've got him and Ollie Watkins. They're in the Champions League. Let's not forget. And he's played really well this season. He's really, you know, he scored goals last year. He was a bit quiet the first season, wasn't he? What a cheeky bid that is. And they tried it in the summer as well, didn't they? I just knew straight away, there's no way in hell Duran's going to West Ham to leave Villa. And Brady's just said in the comments as well, Duran is going nowhere, boys. Chris?
I agree with Braids there. It'd be absolutely stupid. Why would you sell? And you'd say he's one of their best players this season, and he's definitely stepped it up a notch. You know, scored a banger against us. You know, the winning goals against Bayern, and he's just been so instrumental for Villa up front this season. And he's kind of quietened Ollie Watkins, really. Obviously, Ollie Watkins had injuries, but he's the main man currently at the moment, isn't he? Duran. I don't know where West Ham have got 50-odd million to spend on him, but no, you know, he's not going to go there. And Villa would be absolutely stupid at this point in time in January when they're trying to get themselves back into the Champions League spots. I was also, you know, trying to get further in the Champions League. Why would you sell him?
I couldn't believe it. So one of the daftest things I've heard. Like literally, if a player, say Villa weren't where they were, say they weren't in the Champions League, and they were lower down, maybe down with us, maybe top of the bottom half, say, and it was someone higher coming in, then you'd kind of understand it if he was in form that he's in, and all the rest of it. Just some of the stuff you just can't write it, can you? Sometimes I was just scoffing at the telly yesterday.
I saw it pop up on my phone.
Silly bit that is. They tried it in the summer, and then he's gone on to be like, you know, when he's played, he's been brilliant when he's played this season. Bar being dirty when he got sent off the other week, of course, but you know, you have to forgive him.
Yeah, he's a young lad, isn't he? And you know, he's Colombian, am I correct? Isn't he? You know, that sort of aspect. You know what I mean? I think things just boil over, don't they? And you get frustrated, and you'd make that one mistake. It happens. We've seen it plenty of times with players. So I wouldn't, you know, he didn't break his leg or anything, did he? So
West Ham are probably are desperate, aren't they, as well? You know, Danny Ings hasn't quite done it since he's gone there. You know, Antonio, they were so heavily reliant on him. What happened to him? It was terrible, terrible, absolutely terrible. So they're looking. They're actively looking. You know, Potter's just come in. He's going to want people in. He's going to want his type of players coming in. So, but that one's just, you're barking up the wrong tree there. That's it's never happening.
And the Freiburg didn't work, did he?
No.
But he's had injuries as well. The thing is, right, and I know that, you know, clubs in our position at the moment where West Ham are and stuff like that, you naturally want a Premier League proven striker, don't you? And when you're battling, it's the go-to, isn't it? But when you're going for a player that's playing in England at the moment, and especially with a team like Villa who are riding high, you're going to be paying double the money. I bet you they could find something equivalent to Duran, maybe not the same player, in another league.
I was watching Simon Jordan on TalkSport, and he said West Ham did the same with Andy Johnson when he was at Crystal Palace. They tried to get the fans on their side.
Well, they come to us anyway, so we're lucky.
Absolutely. And the last item, Chris, just on this transfer latest before we go, of course, and close out on episode 40. We're back with Forest. They're in the news there. They're actively looking. They're searching. And it's another target. And it's and Wissa, who's been absolutely fantastic for Brentford.
Yeah.
And a derisory amount of money, if that's the correct amount they've put in. And I don't think his contract's coming up anytime soon either. So that amount is ridiculous. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Him and Mbeumo, we've stated about
I love them together. Yeah,
they are so brilliant. Good. If you think Thomas Frank is going to allow him to go, you're sadly mistaken. Because they are pushing. They're trying to get into Europa League, and they very well may do it as well. He's a prized asset. He's a prized asset, isn't he, with Mbeumo? There's not a chance in hell, Chris. Can you 22 million? I couldn't believe what I was reading.
He's worth more than 22. And we've blown the trumpet for both Mbeumo and Wissa for quite a while now, haven't we? Since they really took the reins off Ivan Toney when Toney was suspended. And they really, again, I'm using the word, but both of them stepped up and they've been fantastic. I mean, you can see the difference from, like, as you see the first 2 seasons, and then obviously Ivan Toney being suspended. He was played more attacking, wasn't he, with Mbeumo up front or playing behind each other. And the goals got better. Do you know who would be a good signing for Wissa if he was to leave Brentford? Arsenal would fit Wissa. Well, Wissa would fit Arsenal quite well, more than Cunha, I think.
The amount of service you're going to get in there with their midfield as well. Yeah, do you know what? 11 goals in 19. He's had 2 assists. Even last year's stats, 12 in 34. To do that in the Premier League, it's so hard to score that many goals unless you're like, elite, or you're a top player. It's hard to get all them goals, but look at that. He's been very consistent. He's built on them first 2 seasons there where he got 7. So he's getting better and better as he, goes for his Premier League.
And he doesn't just score normal goals, Stuart, does Wissa. He scores some outrageous goals, and some that you look at him and think, how have you done that? Have you slotted that in there? In certain places. But yeah, if they can get him, I don't know where he'd fit Forest again, because they're still quite a bloated team. They've still got quite a lot of players that they need to get off their books. You know what I mean? And where does Wissa fit in that? Going to the age-old thing where he's talking about Cunha, where is Wissa going to fit in this? Because you upset the balance by bringing a new player in with a team that's already working so well. It's hard for you. It's a difficult one.
How many times has a player been kingpin at a club? All right, you probably put Mbeumo as top boy there. Just marginally. He's not far off him. You leave somewhere where you're one of the top players, and it doesn't work when you move on. Now, I know you were saying, I totally agree with you about service at Arsenal. It'd be next level, wouldn't it? But it'd have to be the right fit. Look at Jack Grealish. I know it's different position. He was kingpin at Villa, and it was a sizable amount. Great business.
Well, you're not going to turn down over 100 million.
No, it hasn't worked. It has not worked, and that's my worry with some of these players. They're beloved at their clubs. They take a step up. Not to say it's happened to everybody. It does work for some. It does work for some. But I just think stay where you are, because Brentford are fighting. They're battling up there with your Bournemouths, aren't they? They've done incredibly well on a shoestring budget. Chris,
Thomas Frank Stewart is underrated as a manager. I think he's one of the best out there, and he was one of mine. I think to take Everton forward. If we could prize him from Brentford, that would have been one of the managers I was hoping we would attempt to go for, because I think he can turn chicken shit into chicken salad. You know what I mean? He can.
Damsgaard's been good in the middle as well.
It took him a while to get used to the Premier League.
He's been absolutely superb. I've been very impressed with him. But they're a hell of a team. I know they had that little blip against Plymouth the other week in the Cup, but that can happen to anybody, of course. He went relatively strong against Plymouth as well, because I was like, who's he picked? And I looked, he went strong. It was just one of them, you have the shocks, don't you, within the FA Cup.
I have to sack him Rooney as well, don't forget. So all those bounces and stuff, isn't
I felt for that guy as well. He was the interim manager before the guy that came in. He hadn't took the job. So he got the big win, and they were interviewing him after. He says, I'm waiting for the new boss to come in. It's like, you've just had your job interview there, son. But hey, it's just one of them. John Scott, just before we go, evening, gents. Well done on the win last weekend. Well deserved. Chris?
John, I'm going to throw it out there. And we've been one of the worst teams in the Premier League this season. but I've not seen anything worse than yourselves in that first half that I've ever seen this season. And I know we've been bad, and I know Southampton have been bad, but I've never seen a Tottenham side play like kindergarten kids at the back. And amount of times there's through balls. I mean, then high through balls were getting through. It's a shame that Calvert-Lewin just has got spaghetti legs when it comes to controlling a ball. Not as worse as Beto's, but because he would, if he could control the ball a bit better, we would have scored a bit more. But I've never seen Tottenham so bad at the back. I worry that Ange is literally on a single piece of ice here. And he's floating straight to the Sharks.
Daniel Levy did not look happy in that box in the main stand at Everton. His face told the picture. If it said 1,000 words, that face to me. But yeah, John, some of your fans have said, "Oh, we had loads of injuries." Would that be a fair assessment? On the Spurs end, we've all had injuries though. John's honest about everything anyway. Do you know what I mean? But I did notice that we've got people out. We really have. But I know you've been a bit threadbare at the back. I know a lot of people are calling for Van der Ven to be back and stuff like that. Dragison's looked awful. He's looked absolutely shocking at the back for him. But John will know more, of course, because he watches Spurs week in, week out. But it's just from what I've seen. But I like Ange. I like Ange a lot.
Yeah, John will be able to answer this. Is it Daniel Levy that is the main problem at Tottenham? Because he's gone there with a lot of money, hasn't he? And they talk about how he's shrewd with money, but he's only won one trophy, haven't they? Really, since he's been owner, is he the problem? Because good managers have gone in there, Conte, Mourinho.
It's got substance.
It hasn't worked, has it? And no. Conte, he's tremendous, a pain in the arse, like Mourinho is, but they get the shit done. And they couldn't even do it at Tottenham. So it's Levy the issue.
John, again, we were a shambles. Levy has sat people for far less. Jose, 5 days before a finals. Redknapp finished fourth, got sacked. Yeah, I know John's stance on it when we've spoken. On previous episodes, it's like you got to give this guy the time. They've got to get through this bit. Again, young Archie, great. He's been playing young players, to be fair to Ange. You know what I mean?
I like
Bergvall. I know John was hot on him. Mikey Moore's coming through. I don't know if he had an injury or not. John would know. So he is trying youngsters. So you got to tip your hat. I know some of that has been forced due to injuries, but he has. Even when they've had players fit, he's played young ones. I'll praise him on that one, definitely. And just one more from John before we go. Justin Kluivert has been amazing this season. Praised him a lot when he started at Ajax. He had a bad spell in Serie A, but he's proven his worth now. Yeah, he was at Roma, wasn't he? He's had a lot of loans, that lad. But 22 points on the fantasy football last week as well. I got scuppered by someone below me.
Almost went to Fulham, if you remember, before Bournemouth. The Fulham tried him for a loan the season before, and for some reason it didn't go through. Obviously, Bournemouth snapped him up then. He's been very quiet, hasn't he? He hasn't really matched the Premier League till this season. Right? I think Areola has obviously got Bournemouth working fantastic. Another, 2 surprise packages we have in the Premier League this season, Bournemouth and Forest. And then he's been at the forefront of it. But Kluivert, isn't it? It's in the genes. His dad was one of my favourite strikers at Barcelona and Ajax. Not after that, more so. I loved him at Barca in the 90s. But it's in his blood, isn't it?
His other lads are playing as well. I think on a lower level.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
2. I think it's 2. It may be 3 of the lads. They're all playing professional football. So, but it's just amazing.
The youngest is at Barca, Stuart. So.
But Patrick should have say, absolutely, fantastic that all the boys are playing professionally. It's great. He must be so proud of his boys. But yeah, Kluivert was still 5.5 million on FPL last week.
That's cheap.
He's bargaining. There's bargains to be had in that midfield. You can, if you're looking to take out like Cole Palmer, because he's like virtually double, you can get 2-3 players in,
a lot of penalties.
Midfield. Yeah. Somebody captained Kluivert actually, so they got 44. This was on like the world thing, not in our private league.
Yeah.
I was like, you jammy bastard.
Known, yeah.
But yeah, that's FPL. But John, cheers for your comments. We'll have you back on very, very soon. Chris, just all the socials before we go, of course.
Yeah, cool. So you can catch us on X, Instagram, YouTube, all the podcasts, audio everywhere. Yeah, I don't need to tell you what they are. I'm sure most of the people now have Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your audio from. We're all on there. We've got our own channel on Facebook. If you want to go back and watch some previous lives we've done, they're all on our Facebook channel. You'll find as well on Sports Network, all our stuff's on there as well. You can go back from 40 episodes back to the very first one if you really want to.
Chris, another little nugget as well, mate. Good pods, we charted. You sent it me, didn't you?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I haven't even looked this
before we go. I know time's a ticking.
It's the first time we've charted in good pods. Obviously, with Big Fight Weekly, we were in around 5th for a long time, and we got to the top spot in the news outlet charts for Big Fight Weekly. So we got 5th in the sports one, and we were up against Sky Sports. And a lot of American NFL ones, which were, well above us in, the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd and 1st spot. But, that's the first time we charted and we went straight to number 5. So I'm dead pleased, because it's hard. This what we're doing now is hard because there's so much sport in the world, and football is probably maybe that NFL are the probably biggest podcast central sports that people talk about. So to land straight in 5th just shows you that we are doing the right thing, and we are talking with passion because this is our number one sport.
Absolutely. Long may it continue. Let's get in more charts. Let's get in the Apple podcast charts again. That's another thing we want to get done. When we come back for episode 41, Chris has selected Le Tournoi from 1997, the round robin league tournament from 97. Chris, you obviously had Sky. I didn't. I watched the highlights on ITV. I was checking teletext at the time. I remember it, but I'd stay up and watch the highlights with Dad of the games, of the day. Fantastic tournament. We're obviously going to talk about that in the next episode. And a bit of nostalgia. But yeah, it's been good talking about the transfers. Of course, there'll be plenty more going on as we get to deadline day. So possibly next week we'll have some more transfer news on top of everything else. And thank you everyone. Thank you for your comments, of course. Cheers to John. Cheers to Brady for the comments. And we'll see you very, very soon for episode 41 of Football Then and Now.
Take care.
Football Then and Now, a fun look at football nostalgia and the modern game intertwined. Join us.